This ain't nothing but sweat inside my hands. So I dig into my pocket, all my money spent. So I get deeper, but still coming up with lint. So I start my mission, leave my residence, thinking how could I get some dead presidents? I need money.
Man.
I used to be a stick up.
Coach. You
What's
ask,
up?
and you receive, man. You ask and you receive.
You know, I think you have to start every day with a little Eric B. and Rakim.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
And maybe some coffee and some OJ.
We needed more Long Island on this video conference. This is good.
There we go.
Or is it?
Let's go.
Which way am I looking at it? I don't know.
Yeah, they're all good.
So, you know, yeah, we got a couple of flids on this call.
Yeah, feels good. Feels good to outnumber Mike right now. This is really
You
nice.
know, I'm looking at those helmets. They should have like skulls. You should have like human skulls back there. Just like all the different people that you beat, whose ankle you broke back at Cold Spring Harbor High School.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. Get those up there. All right, Coach Byrne, what's happening? How we doing? Welcome to the inaugural Coaches Summit.
We're good, man. I'm ready to spit some hot fire like Dylon. Oh.
Like Dylon, what are we in the band right now?
No, it's Chappelle Show.
Daddy,
The 5 best rappers of all time. Dylon, because he spits hot fire.
Right. There you go. So I'm,
man.
we're probably going to run over because, you know, we're going to riff questions. So, you know, I'm ready to go if you guys are ready to go.
Once we committed to the intro music, we had a feeling that we would run over.
This is the definition Electric Factory. Without
we can banter. You know, I got no problem with a little banter, but I think we got to focus on your audience and not what I want.
Yeah, let's give the people what they want. We're gonna banter plenty. Again,
Yeah,
questions, drop them in Q&A all day. Put them in there. We'll get to them. Coach Byrne, we'll make sure to pepper him with some questions throughout. But what do you think, guys? You want to dive right into the presentation or what?
Yeah, well, no, I think we have to, in tradition, especially if we're throwing the flitter out there. Coach Byrne, we got to know how you say how you doing. Being a Long Island guy.
How you doing? So it's partly a statement and partly a question because you're not sure who you're throwing it at.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Ooh, we got a huge question in the Q&A before we start. Coach Foster wants to know your favorite deli on the island.
You know, there was a deli in the town that I grew up in, Levittown, that you know, Coach Winkoff's dad must have paid the guy off to name a sandwich after me. So that was my favorite because it was my hometown deli, but they got out of the business. And I guess it was Coliseum Deli for a long time by Hofstra.
Yeah.
They're out of business now.
Yeah, what is that? Pontanos or something now?
Can't go back.
No.
You know, I'm old school. I'm old school loyal that way. You know, I mean, it's hard not to say the Seaport. I mean, any place that charges $15 for a deli sandwich, you know, that's respect.
Yeah. Coach, you can catch that on the way before the ferry. It's quite the nap to set that ferry from Port Jeff all the way over.
You know,
I'll tell you what.
Maybe that's how BU travels. I fly.
Man, yeah. I have a day trip Long Island guy. Or I'm crashing in Corey's old room, which has now become my room. At the Winkoff. So that was nice. I like that job, Coach. That's good. Bring the heat.
But I'm good to go, fellas. Can you guys?
Yeah, let's go. Rip.
Can you guys see my screen?
Go.
We can
we can see it.
All right. So just as I get started, I wanted to kind of for your listeners and coaches, I wanted to kind of throw a couple of just assumptions and things so people know where I'm coming from as we're laying this out. You know, I'm a big kind of mnemonic device guy. It helps me remember things. It must be my Catholic school upbringing where you had to memorize all this stuff and they never really taught you anything, but you learned a lot of facts. So that's where kind of the 7 C's come from. There's definitely more than 7, and I'll probably reference 8 or 9, but 7 C's sounds better than 8 C's. So I went with 7. And I think it also helps me kind of organize my practice plan or my kind of opponent preparation So when you're thinking about a practice plan and you've been allocated a certain amount of time, at least is the way I thought about when I was an assistant, and I still think about it as a head coach, is it helps me think about, hey, I want to touch these 5 C's today, or I want to hit all 7, or I think about it relative to the drills I'm going to create or make up or modify when we're preparing for an opponent. So I think it's really helpful for that sort of organization. I also think it's really helpful for your players because it really kind of summarizes the things that you value, and it makes it easy for them to remember it. Like, these are the core things. These are the fundamentals. These are the non-negotiables. These are the bricks of your defense. And if you have a mnemonic device or have clarity on these terms, then you can, underneath these terms, you can build the terminology that teaches it. You can add in the drills that reinforce it. And it becomes kind of a nice rubric and a teaching methodology. So your players totally get what you want them to get. And then when 1/4 of your team graduates, you still have 3/4 who have totally immersed themselves in learning this way. So I think that synergy is really important. I think when I get into the drills and the clips that I'm going to show, I think you're going to see kind of how I believe coaching defense can be evolved, because you're going to see, a clip that might focus on covering a guy, but you're going to see the collapse part. You're going to see collecting a ground ball and all that stuff. It's hard not to teach and have things that overlap. And I very rarely kind of hone in on just one element of the defense. I try to always incorporate, whether it's a slide read or a recovery or a language piece that becomes really important. So that overlap is just a natural extension of the way I think about coaching. I also believe in kind of customizing and creating drills that are unbelievably relevant. They reflect a central part of the game that involves high reps, that involves language, and involves kind of peer-to-peer teaching. Like, and you'll see on the film when we show it, and, most of us as coaches, you might have 15 to 20 people with your position if you have D-middies and goalies and whatnot, and you're one person. And how do I keep progress happening when I can't be in all these places at once? And the only way you do that is to deputize and, let people lead, knowing that it's going to be imperfect, that they're not going to be able to teach it or coach it exactly the way that you can teach it or coach it because you're the expert, but having them learn, that totally accelerates and expedites your development of your defense, your team defense as a culture, and this peer-to-peer communication where, this generation, some of you guys are in this generation, some of you guys, is that they're not comfortable telling a teammate that they're doing something wrong, or they're falling short, or they need to do that better. So I think that element of peer-to-peer coaching is absolutely critical to developing a culture, while at the same time, as a coach, being willing to give up some of that power and that control, because I think that trade-off is worth it. I think it'll help you progress better as a culture. So I can stop there. If any questions have come in before we get started, or if you guys had anything you want to ask me.
Coach, I think that's a really cool way to look at it, especially, you talk to you look at other programs like a Tufts, like Coach D'Onofrio is on, and those guys are coaching each other for the entire fall because there is no real practice, right? So to your point, like, these guys, especially defensively, we're on the field problem solving without coach, right? So you're giving them the tools to do that as the game is happening, rather than goal happens and all 7 eyes look at the sideline, coach, tell us what happened, right? I think that's such an important evolution in a defense, is the guys having ownership and being able to talk through it themselves.
And teaching them how to run a drill.
Right.
Teaching them how to self-critique in the middle of a drill. And so I think that is unbelievably critical. And I think it's, it was important when I started at Notre Dame, and became less important when, coaching for 12 or 13 years at one place. It became kind of plug and play after a while. And then coming to a new place and teaching them a completely new defense and new terminology and everything that goes along with that. But much like the NESCAC having captain's practices in the Ivy League, I think it perpetuates that. So I inherited some of that peer-to-peer kind of culture already when I got here. And then I think the last thing is I film and critique and do film of guys running our drills, because I want them to get better at it when I walk on. And I'm always looking to try to save time. And like, we don't do a lot of stick drills, classic stick drills. And so the defensemen play the roles of offensive players in a lot of the drills that we do. And so that's where some of the stick handling and some of the drills that we do around that is, I want to be able to say the name of a drill. They already know how many people are in it. They get to it. And then if you can save 90 seconds every time you change a drill or something within your practice plan, all that adds up to maybe 10 or 15 minutes of extra coaching or extra drills or extra scrimmaging. So I'm always looking to steal a few seconds whenever I can. And I want to find out who's a good leader, who's a great follower. You know, I'll do things sometimes where if it's a communication drill, I will tell the only people I want to hear are the freshmen, because now you can't hide. There's nothing, you know, you can find out whether the guy's just mumbling along like, yeah, I know the words to Stairway to Heaven. Yeah. No, you don't, because I just made you solo, Robert Plant, and you don't know the words. So locking in some drills where only the freshmen can speak, or the freshmen have to organize the drill, and you'll find out pretty quickly who's been learning and who hasn't. So that's the setup before we get going here. And anything else before I get going, fellas?
Let's get into
Rip.
it.
All right. So again, probably like some of your counterparts, you know, our video is, you know, from the space shuttle because at Harvard Stadium. So and a lot of times when you're shooting practice, you're not shooting it to use it to run, you know, do a presentation for somebody. So, you know, I'll throw that out there. So not all the film is great,
Disclaimer.
but I'll use the telestrator and we'll go from there. So I'm gonna hit the play here and we'll get right into it. So the first drill, you know, the first C that we're gonna cover is probably the thing that we spend the least on. We have a drill that we call dodge, bounce, redodge. And we set this up a variety of ways. And you can see that there's people kind of arrayed all over the half field. And we're going to focus on kind of this group right here. So there's actually two distinct groups going on at the same time. You know, one's in one alley, one's in the other alley. And so when we do this drill, and we have all of our drills are on our YouTube channel, is, you know, we're specifying something that's going to happen. So this happens to be one where a guy starts his dodge down the alley and he swims to the middle of the field. And we're practicing a little bit how to defend a swim move, because I have very specific feelings on how to defend that, playing, you know, coaching against so many teams that have Canadians or play Canadian style dodging. But I also add in, you know, a slide and a slide read element. So this guy's the slider in that group, this guy's the slider in that group. And so to be honest with you, and I've said this before on other things, is I don't think there's not anything I spend less time on than covering people. I don't do a lot. I don't like put, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. It's just when I think about the amount of time that I have to coach, you know, guys arrive, we don't do agility ladders and, you know, other than in like preseason and stuff like that. We don't come out there and do that stuff. I don't use a lot of cones, plus because I don't want to waste the time to throw a cone down. I try to, you know, which is an important C for me, is I want my guys' creativity and visualization that they can understand the situation. So in this drill, I'm telling the guy, that the defenseman who's playing the role of an offensive player, start your dodge down the alley, swim to the middle of the field. And, you know, I teach my guys to kind of to attack the sternum and the armpit when guys swim, because the sternum is a lot of surface area. And when you get a guy underneath his armpit, you can really kind of direct him where you want. A lot of guys go for the shaft or the head of the stick, and the guy's centrifugal force these guys are so skilled, the ball doesn't come out these days. So part of this is working on the double move of a swim. And the other part of it is, and probably as critical, is, watching these guys reorient themselves. Hey, I think the slide angle is there. Then I have to reorient myself, and now my slide angle is there. And I'm a big believer in the kind of choreography and the footwork needed to play really good help defense. And so in my choice between, I have 2 minutes to work on this and 2 minutes to work on that, I'm probably going to spend 1:45 working on off-ball footwork and choreography and stance and read and all the things that go into it, and 15 minutes on the on-ball stuff. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just, it's worked. And I believe it because I think everybody gets run by, even the best defenseman I've ever coached. Matt Landis got slid to a lot. And so, so you got to be prepared for the other 5 roles. So I'm going to let this run, and we can talk about, so.
I don't like cones either, Coach.
What's that?
I don't like cones either.
Good. So I want you to focus on this group over here, these guys. So this guy's going to start his alley dodge, right? It's not great. We're going like 50% speed, right? You can see this guy reaching with his hands. So when we break reaching for his body instead of bringing his hands and feet, you can see that gap right here between him and the guy. He's trying to reach with his hands instead of stepping up and taking that space with his hands and his body. And so, you can already see this guy's oriented himself. He was prepared. He was left foot, right foot when he thought it was an alley. And now he's right foot, left foot as it becomes, sweep to the middle of the field. And that, like, of the things that I think about in the critical thing, if it's really hard to be great at everything. Yeah, this guy didn't execute the on ball perfectly, but I like the fact that this guy in the slide roll repositioned himself. He was left foot, right foot for the alley dodge, and now he's left foot, right foot for the swim to the middle of the field. And then we'll kind of critique, the finishing off of a slide. So yeah, this is a little bit about covering guys and how to cover a swim as an example. And we'll do this drill where we're defending a hitch into a step through or a split roll or any sort of combination moves that the offensive guys will do. We'll do this drill the exact same way, where the guy has to make the approach and the on ball contact and then the slide read. And
right.
I think one of the things that's missed when you watch a lot of club practices or high school practices is that they work so much on the efficiency of the slide and recovery that a lot of times the recovery guy is leaving too soon before the slide guy has gotten pressure. And so now you have 2 people committed to the ball and 0 ball pressure, which is a problem. And so I work a lot about how to kind of finish, finishing slides. Because I think a lot of guys do everything right and then they lunge or they wind up or they go for the takeaway or they go for a one-handed poke, or the guy who got beat is already peeling off and recovering, or that guy's going for the takeaway. And how often in a game do you see in this scenario, and it happens a lot, is in these 2 guys, as you got a 2-on-1 here, where ball pressure is so critical so that this guy can't escape. How often do you see that guy split those 2 guys? Pretty consistent. And a lot of times it's the last second of the approach. The guy winds up and gives up a split, or a guy, reaches up to make some tomahawk check. So, dodge, bounce, redodge is a dodge, a step away, and now a second dodge. And it becomes, I think, really important to, all right, how do you defend that, close that space, which I pointed out, but also adding on this, how do you close out, how do you slide, and how do you chase at the same time? So that's that. I think I go into another drill here, or do I go into a clip? I'm trying to remember. So we got all these groups, and you can see me. I'm over here with this group, kind of coaching them up. That's me right there. And all these other groups are coaching each other. And then I'll peel off and go to the next group. I'm kind of like the quality control manager in these situations.
Wearing, you got your Jordans on the field right there, Coach. What are you wearing? Air Force Ones?
I got my Air Max.
Nice 95s, lime green.
I don't know what year these babies are.
Oh, I have no idea, but they look
They're
fantastic.
fresh. They're fresh. I'm like 6'8" with these things on. Don't do anything athletic in the Air Max, because you will roll your ankle. All right. So, here's a little bit of an example from a game. And, you can see this guy over here. We're focused over here. He's just defended him. I'm going to go back to the beginning. All right. So I'm going to go back. Hold on a sec. All right. So he's defending him here. We're focusing here on these two cats. Right? He's going to get contact, which is great. And I think one of the mistakes that guys make when they're covering people, if they get great contact with a shove or a sneaky cross check, is that way too often guys sit there and admire their work. They're like, I just did that. They're like, I'm a hero. Everybody look at me. And when you create that separation, I'm a big believer that you got to take some of that territory. You probably can't take it all. So if you earned, 48 inches, take 24. So that when he redodges, dodge, bounce, redodge, when he redodges, he's got less space. But a lot of things guys do is they sit and admire. And the other thing they do is instead of bringing their feet, I call this the zombie, when they put their hands out. And sit, they want to get ball pressure, but they don't want to bring their body with them. So my guys know, like, hey, you got zombie. You're like this. Just like it's bad to get alligator, which is getting your hands pinned like this. It's terrible to get zombie. So you're going to see here, when this guy gets a little space, he drives off on the invert, right? And he reaches with his hands. You can see right now, his hands, you can just see from the lean angle. Look at the angle that his body's at there. He didn't want to bring his body. And now this territory that he earned, he didn't take any of it. So now as this guy restarts his dodge, you're going to see kind of how we're going to have to slide. And this is, I won't get into the shape, but a lot of teams run this shape. Duke and Ohio State were one of the first teams to run this kind of umbrella shape with one guy who dives, one guy who sits in the middle. We actually call it sit dive. Is, you're going to see how your off-ball defenseman with good sideways positioning, good stance, can collapse to a feed. So I'm going to play this. So this guy lunges. We call that getting scissored. I call that getting scissored. See how his feet are split there?
Yep.
Like a scissor about to be cut. And so when he scissors, and as a side note, I'm not covering it tonight, but I work a lot on signs of guys who are about to get beat. And we practice what that looks like. A lot of guys don't want to teach negatives or, wow, it's kind of like coaches who never work on end of game, like you're never going to be behind at the end of a game. It's like, right. Guys get beat, guys do dumb things. That's not that I could ever perfect this, but I think working on these other 5 guys is more manageable. You can manipulate that more than making him great at being an on-ball guy. I think these 5 guys, you can make these guys great easier than making that guy great on ball. But that's me. So he ends up getting beat here because he lunges and gets scissored. And you can see, I really like from a sideways stance, slide read, just like we worked in DBR. This guy goes from a sideways stance and he has to finish this thing. And now you can see back pipe collapse. This guy coming up, this guy coming down, and then, we end up getting a loose ball. So we get the collect and clear, which are other C's that we work on in this stuff. So, I won't focus on this part too much. We get a ground ball and we clear the ball. So, I think there's another, approach drill, how to close out on somebody, how to cover somebody who's making a double move. So I want you to focus on this group here, fellas. So there's 3 offensive guys here. These guys are defensemen playing the role of offensive guys, and 2 defensive guys. This guy's blurred out because he's caught between that circle. So it's a 3-on-2. This is a drill that everybody does, some version on it. We call it, the first drill we called was DBR, dodge, bounce, redodge. This is 32 lunge pail. And I'm practicing defending a double move and practicing collapsing off when the ball moves, exiting into your off ball roll. So you can see a sideways stance here. This guy relative to the ball. This guy's defending a double move, and then he's going to have to exit and play the off ball roll. So this is a pretty much standard drill that a lot of people do. So he's defending a roll, a dodge and a roll back, right? Ball leaves, gets transferred, and now he got to move into his next off ball roll. This is something right here. This guy, when you're doing this drill, I'm a big believer. You got to finish your approach, even if it means you get run by. You might as well. I tell my guys all the time, you might as well be a million miles away if your head of your stick ends up that short from a guy. This right here is where the head of a stick is. This is where the guy is. So you might have great technique, but if you don't finish this slide, guy's got hands and eyes and the ability to split and roll and do all the things to you. So, and again, our dodgers are going about 75% speed in this drill. So your technique should be perfect. So when we do the film study on the execution of the drill, that'll be pointed out. What I'm looking for from this guy who's now collapsed is, is he sneaking a peek to play out to see where his split is? Is he in the athletic stance? Is he reading this dodge? Is he pivoting depending on which way this guy goes with his move? Particularly if you're watching for signs of a guy about to get beat, is a guy who pulls up on his approach because he's worried about getting run by. I don't care about you getting run by. I care about ball pressure. I care about making a guy a double move guy. I care about him turning his back. So don't worry about getting run by. You got a teammate who's going to be ready to read and support as he needs to. So we'll do this drill, the ball, and then the other part of this drill is the guy playing the offensive role. We may have all these guys doing the same dodge, split roll, swim roll, hitch split, whatever. They'll either all be doing the same dodge or change a dodge, and then we'll customize the dodge to the scouting report of our opponent. So we get multiple benefit out of it. The ball moves, and so we'll just, that's how we'll kind of replicate 5 and 7 and 10-yard approaches. We'll manipulate the size of that 3-on-2. We might make it, it might not become an isosceles triangle. It might be a right angle triangle where one approach is 5 yards and one is 10 yards. So we'll manipulate them so you get used to making different approaches of different lengths. So, so this is a good example. A guy circled, he makes an approach, he exits, not great, a little too much hopping. The guy who's on the ball right now, watch this, he stands up straight. I can tell you with 100% certainty, he got murdered in film. You don't stand up straight when you exit. It makes me angry just watching it right now. And so,
I'm sure.
But now you're looking at, and this guy didn't do a great job at it, but look at the length of his approach. That's a long approach. You got to get, the only way you're comfortable with those is if you do them a lot. And it's one of the things that we do a lot of. So now he's got to make this long approach, right? He pulls up a little bit and reaches with his hands. He zombies a little bit, Now he's reaching. The guy steps away and redodges, but he stayed athletic, and he ends up going over his head, which is, not something I teach. It was something I did a lot, but not something I teach. And then we end up with the ground ball to escape. And so, I'm trying to kind of replicate the game in the drills that we're doing. So,
Coach, where was your action shot in the mural in the background of that stadium there?
That's a long story. I don't think I've made that. Frankly, I don't think I deserved it, so I'm not that upset with it. I didn't become a good player until I was about 32. So, so I'm going to skip. I'm going to show this drill quick. It's from Notre Dame when I coached at Notre Dame, and I think it's a really good drill. This is whoa, okay. I don't know how that happened. Ooh, hold on, going back. All right. So we got 3 guys arrayed in a umbrella here. This is called umbrella approaches. So these guys are offensive guys. And here's the defensive guy. He's going to make approaches to all 3 of these guys, each of which are doing a different dodge. And he's got to recover and exit each time. So cancel that. Run this out.
The posture just on the initial guy is, you can see from what you spoke about before. And in one of our episodes, Coach, we do your game against Duke. I think your last game that you coached at Notre Dame, and just the amount of times we were able to say, look at the posture, look at the posture, look at the posture. You can tell even just in this drill, to what you spoke to about culturally before, having onus to your players, you can see isn't quite there yet with your Harvard guys. That guy's standing straight up. And then the first drill you show at Notre Dame, the guy's like butts to the ground, great posture, incredible.
And listen, here, when I was here, like one of the things that would happen when you think about like culture is that these are all the freshmen. Before even the first practice, these guys would teach all of these guys how to do the drills.
Right.
Because I'm big on the Socratic method. I like throwing guys right into the middle of everything. So yeah, it goes back to having 75% of your, when you stay at one place for a while, you're going to have 75% of the group coming back. That cultural knowledge is a huge benefit, But that being said, by the end of our 4th game, at Harvard, I think our guys have done an unbelievable job. So you're going to see this drill coming out. He's got to make this approach, double move, right? Guy stepping away. Look at this. We call this sneaking a peek. This guy's going to turn his head, look back. I want you to, he's now an off-ball defenseman, this guy. Sneak a peek where you're leaving, sneak a peek where you're going. So he comes in here, sneaking a peek, the ball moves. Now he makes a move on a guy trying to hitch. Keep the drill going. He recovers, sneaks a peek where he's leaving and finds the ball. The ball moves again. 3rd guy, split, roll back. He exits and you end with a ground ball. So I like this drill. I just didn't have a film of it. So we call that umbrella ground balls. That's still on the Notre Dame YouTube channel, I would imagine. So that gives you an idea of kind of how we're starting. And obviously communication is a really important C to focus on. This drill. This drill we call Simon Says. I took off the sound of all the other drills that we're doing because I want to give you guys a sense of practice being loud. Loud is a skill like anything else. A guy tells me, Coach, I'm just, I'm kind of laid back. I'm like, no, if you can't be loud, you can't play. My guys know that's a hard and fast rule. If you can't be loud, you can't play. I'd rather you be loud and wrong than quiet and right. So, because if you're loud and wrong, we can correct you. If you don't say anything, we got to guess what you're thinking and stuff like that. So I'm going to let this run so you guys can hear. Again, this Harvard Stadium is massive. So this will give you an idea of how loud this is. So I'm going to go back so I can talk about the drill. This is probably one of the drills I'm most proud of because I think it has tremendous benefit. We're going to focus on this group here, and you're in pairs. You can do this in groups of 3 and groups of 4, but basically, X, this guy right here, he's the instructor, and this guy's the reactor. So X is telling R what to do. X is the talker, the communicator. R is the reactor. R has to do everything X tells him to do. So, with the sound off, I tell these guys when I watch the film of this drill, I don't need to hear the sound. I can tell by your body reaction what your teammates told you what to do. And so this is a foundational drill. So, you can see that he just told them to slide. He's telling them to recover, alley dodge, so, all these things kind of, they build upon each other that I think is absolutely critical to really coaching good. And now you can see all the different groups that are going on. This is me looking lean and all black, very slimming, very slimming. And, here's a pair, here's a pair. Whoop. They're all over the field. There's a group of 3 there. There's a group of 2 here. So we've utilizing the whole field, and guys are getting reps and they're being loud, which I think is so critical. So I'm looking for reaction, body language, stance, approach, recovery. So yeah, this is a communication drill, but it's also a closeout drill. It's also a collapse drill, right? It's obviously a listening drill. And in a game, no one cares whether it's not like it's a caste system. Well, I'm not going to listen to some freshman tell me what to do. No, that's exactly why you have to do the drill, because it doesn't matter. He could be wrong. You have to trust your teammates telling you the right thing to do, and you have to react. And you're not blind, you're not robotic about it, but if you're at a good stance and have good reaction, you can adapt to pretty much anything. And so, so that's really an important kind of fundamental drill to our defense. And again, practicing being loud.
Coach, I love the chaos in that drill too, right? Like you got to be loud because everyone else is being loud. And there's a culture / functional piece to that, which I think is really cool.
Absolutely. And we don't, I don't hand out a glossary. I mean, not there's anything teams that have big books of glossaries and I try to make things simple, because if you can do the simple really well, it appears to be much more complex to the outside world. So we have maybe like 6 to 8 terms that are so, I could write it on a napkin, here's what it is. And so it puts a lot, puts the onus on stance and communication, how loud you can be, how clear. And again, most of the terms, with the exception of 1 or 1 syllable words. It's a word that describes a situation, maybe a situation in a role, a responsibility. So 1 syllable words. Even at Harvard, where they really understand maybe a 5 syllable word, we keep it simple. I don't want them thinking too much. They're too smart. So this is probably from one of the first practices, after a couple of days of practice, and you can see the progress. So this is back in like mid-September. You can see that there's pieces of everything, right? You can see, how you deal with a long approach. Like this guy just came here, but mostly the drill is around, all right, how we're communicating up the field and how these 2 guys are communicating to each other becomes really important. So it has element of other key C's that we've talked about already. So focus less on the dodge and focus on these 2 guys over here.
Coach, we had a question come in, and it kind of relates to, organizing your defense and being prepared to slide, recover, play on ball properly. What role do your goalies play in this in terms of organizing the defense?
And again, I could be in a minority here. The goalie has the hardest job on the field. If I had a goalie who was a mute, it would be okay. I don't think the goalie see the ball, save the ball. I don't expect the goalie to be pointing out who the slide guy is. Watch this guy sneaking. Watch the skip lane. There's a guy open in the front, like, holy schmolies. The guy's having 90-mile-an-hour shots slung at him. So again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I expect within your defense to have 5 guys doing that. All these guys, that's their job. This guy's job, see the ball, save the ball. And to be honest with you, I've played and coached with guys who were, the Kemps, who were first team All-Americans and goalie of the year at Notre Dame, they were unbelievably quiet. They wouldn't say shh if they had a mouthful. And so, and then Scotty Rogers was really loud, but I just see the ball, save the ball. That's
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
you will. So, focus on those guys inside, right? And so you can see that there's a communication that happens. This guy within our defense, this guy is the original slide guy. And so they need to coordinate whether he's going to stay in that role or switch off the role. And that only can happen with gestures and communication. Right? So he called him off. You can hear it on the film. So he told this guy he was off. You could have done it one of any other number of ways. And you could have gone with the guy who was in between, but you can see how he gestures him there with the stick. Really, really, and I was at this practice, obviously, so I know that happened, but, he moved him into a spot with his stick. And one of the things that's one of my pet peeves, and if you're in high school or a club coach on here, I hate pointing. I hate taking one hand off of the stick. Just be louder and gesture. You can't do anything with one hand on the stick. That's when skip passes and feeds come through. So I'm not a huge fan of pointing, but that gesture where you push that guy through, and then you can see this guy, much like we did in the DVR drill, trying to get ball pressure. This guy had stayed collapsed, and now you're seeing the recovery, which is a scary thing on defense. I don't think there's anything scarier than that kind of approach, whether it would be through a skip lane or anything. But this guy had done, I'm going to go back so I can make this point, which is, I think, an important part of defense, is when this guy, watch that pivot right here. You just saw it. And my sense of coaching defense is that every step that this guy takes that direction, this guy over here becomes less relevant. And so this guy's reaction should not be in this direction toward him. It should be in that direction toward the crease, which is what he does. And so, watch him pivot. Watch this guy right here. If you're watching at home, this is really important. Watch this guy pivot toward the crease. He's going to move toward this guy, and so when I'm watching film, like, to me, that's a great play. It's a great invisible play. Only your coaches and your teammates think it's a great play. And frankly, that's the only people that matter. So watch him turn and pivot here. He turns in support. And so on one hand, you're like, holy mackerel, he just added 2 yards onto his approach. This guy probably becomes our slide guy as he recovers. He goes from being on ball, slid to, recover, and now probably going to have to slide if this guy dodges. I'd rather that than a dodge and dump. Nothing worse than a crease feed goal in my mind. So, so now we're going to see, if this guy did dodge, we're going to need this guy to get top side, ball side, so he can make his next read. So, so I think you can see how it's all kind of tied together. And we're coming up to our last clip, so I think I'm on schedule. Noah stole a few minutes of my time. I can't believe I'm on schedule. I feel like
don't you worry about it. This is your show, Coach. You're on schedule for whatever you want.
All right, man. Well, I know people have to get on to other things. Although if you're a parent and you hate tucking your kids in or giving them a bath, this is a bonus. So you can thank me later. And then obviously, so we talked about covering and closing out and collapsing on the crease and collapsing and getting off of your man. We talk about multiple approaches, different angles, how to exit off of your man to get onto your next roll. We talked about how it's not negotiable to communicate, to not communicate, and how being better to be loud and wrong than quiet and right. And then obviously the last thing, you got to be good off the ground and you got to be able to handle the ball. So I got a series of drills here, and then we can wrap it up and take some questions. So So what's that question? Okay, all right. So this is called ball bag. This is just a really good pre-practice drill where I'm asking our guys to, go like 50% technique. We'll do this at varying speeds for varying lengths. Everybody has a ball. They're their own man in this drill. They can get 15 to 20 ground balls from the end line to the midline. I'll ask them to do I'll ask them to just do straight volume. I'll ask them to do double moves. I'll ask them to do triple moves sometimes. I'll ask them to walk the dog, whatever it is. And so it's a good warm-up drill. It's a great way to focus on technique. And then maybe the next time you come back, it's full-on game speed. And so we'll do this drill, pretty consistently. So here's us coming back, doing some multiple moves. And, they're dodging an imaginary guy. Again, imagination and creativity become really important, because if I'm going to do something that involves either a lot of teaching or a lot of reps, I need you to be individually accountable with your time and your reps. And if you're in a 2-person group or a 3-person group for a group, you better be open to coaching and confident enough to coach. So again, I'm willing to sacrifice some control because I want to find out who the guys who are all in. I want to find out the guys who are focused in technique. I want to find out who are the guys who can trust by themselves without me looking over their shoulder. So, we got a clip. And again, this is an example. We ended up getting a takeaway here against UMass, our first game, our win against UMass, right? So we got a good slide, a good strip. And again, how to play this 2-on-1 ground ball, much like in ball bag, which we just did. He's scooping it, running upfield with a lot of space and with someone chasing him. And, in the drill, nobody's beating on him, but now he's going to have to beat this guy. And, he doesn't get stripped there. I didn't cut off that clip, but we do practice. A lot of teams throw the one-handed wrap check at the midline. There's nothing more disheartening than doing everything right and get stripped right at the midline. So we will do this drill, which I'm about to do, at the midline, where a guy's got to run through a gauntlet of people, including the last guy who's throwing a one-handed wrap. So a lot of times when I'm thinking about creating the drills that I use to coach my defense, the genesis of them is probably a failure in the past. A guy didn't do this, or a team did that, or because we didn't do it technically the way it should be done, we got to go back and recreate the drill or make up a drill. So yeah, getting stripped at the midline against a team that runs a 10-man ride, for example, there's nothing worse than that. And as a defensive coach, where you're like, all right, we got the stop, we got the ground ball, we're 1 yard away. So you make up a drill that you run for 60 seconds where all these guys have to go over the head and one-hand wrap and do all that stuff. That desensitizes them, and it gives them the confidence. You know what? I can run by a guy who's trying to go over my head. I can run by a guy who's trying to one-hand wrap me. So this is a drill we call Gauntlet. And you can see there's 5 groups. There's a group here at X, 2 groups on GLE, and 2 groups at like a 45-degree angle or coming out from the front of the goal. And again, practicing scooping contested ground balls, maybe off of a skip pass nugget or a goalie save, and it ricochets off the him. So I'm going to let this run, and then I'll come back. So the guy dodges, and then when he gets to the end, and this is, you can tell how different this is at the start. I expect, when I laid out this drill, I expected these guys, when they got to the end, right, they weave their way through. When they get to the end, that they make this turn really wide, and each time they go through, they change which way they exit from. And that's true of every group. You get to the end, you make a big exit. And this guy pivoted, so he got murdered when we watched film, and I remember murdering him. And this guy pivoted, he got to the end and kind of did a check mark instead of making this turn, again, because that's what's going to happen in a game. The attackman's not going to disappear. He's going to, you just did something to him. He wants a revenge, So when you watch this, so these guys are dodging, and I'm asking the guys playing defense, this guy's throwing a poke check. I want this guy to fake a wrap check, maybe go over his head. Each of the guys who are the defenders in this drill have to do a different check. So let's focus on this. Let's focus on this group right here, fellas. These three guys. So he weaves his way through. This guy fakes a slash, and so he rolls them. And then he did a really good job. Good timing. This guy kind of cuts here. He makes a big turn, because is there anything worse than a guy not finishing this? His momentum is carrying him this way, and now he's trying to throw. This is an easier pass to throw than your momentum's carrying you that way, and you have to throw it across your body. That drives me insane, because that pass, typically you either pull it past a guy or it sails past him that way. So I'm psyched that this guy did everything right, which doesn't guarantee you a perfect exchange pass, because this is like a pass that a guy might throw to the goalie, right? He escapes and throws it there. If you throw that ball too far here, maybe a tackman picks it off. You throw this pass here, he throws it out of bounds. If you throw it at him because you're moving at him, it might be short, but at least it's going at him. So, those are things, little pet peeves of mine. So he finishes it. And we got another group. He starts him with a ground ball. So I like that drill because it takes place near the cage, and each of those groups will rotate. You'll get reps. We'll do probably 45 seconds in each spot. So in a couple of minutes, you've probably gotten, this is less about volume ground balls and probably more about, you being poised and comfortable in space, and the technique and your hands and your footwork and your hips delivering a passable ball while escaping pressure. Ball bag was about volume. This was about technique and poise. So, we get to a rep here in the game. This is we're man down here. Skip, nugget, blows up a guy. Here comes the second guy come in to ground ball. And again, this is, he's getting chased. He's got to escape that guy. He's getting pursued by another guy. And if he pivots here, if he doesn't do the big turn right here, this is, you go from a stop with man up, man down, where you didn't give up a shot, to strip. So he makes this turn. And again, doing it in both directions is really important. He happens to be a natural lefty. So obviously he's going to be more natural. That's why you have to do the drill with him doing this to his right hand, because you don't always get to the hand that you want. But now he's got two people pursuing him, right? He escapes that. And because of, look at that, because of the terrible approach, but maybe by not to point out my opponent, but that's a slash. I hate that in writing. This guy winds up again. Terrible approach. This guy goes for, and now he's behind him. If he doesn't do that athletically, because we did gauntlet ground balls, he doesn't get to escape this guy. And because he's got momentum, he delivers a ball right on the guy's ear. And next thing you know, you're able to clear the ball. And, we did get 10-man here, and we ended up scoring. So, one of the things that I like to do in my drills, which is, a drill that was created by a previous failure in a previous life, maybe in my previous coaching life, explaining to my guys the cost and benefit of doing them right and wrong. So when I'm laying out that drill, I'll spend as much time on the footwork of that big turn that defenseman just made, as well as the price of doing it wrong. That's the emotional part of it. They'll get the intellectual part. All right, I can mimic this drill. But once they embrace the intellectual part, is if I don't do this right, I get stripped and we're on defense again, and we could give up a goal. When they embrace the emotional part of that, you'll get your guys to embrace the technique of doing something right at a really high level. So that was Island. That was here's the last drill. So now we're focused on a little bit less of, technique still matters. Touches matter, working in some kind of real game situation. So we have, four people in the drill. We'll start with a shot or maybe a loose ball, and we get our clearing patterns of our defensemen, spreading out, stretching, and, being in this area, if you do it and you give up a ground ball, you want guys taking off before the ball is under control. So we start, guys fan out, right? And again, that's a defenseman playing the role of the goalie. And again, I think having guys play, other roles, playing an offensive player in a drill, playing a goalie, it gives them a tremendous amount of empathy. When they play the role of an offensive player in a drill, they start to see and think like an offensive player. That's like an added bonus. That's added value. Doing drills where you have to dodge and set up things, that's bonus. You get stick skills, you get empathy and understanding of how an offensive player thinks about the game, and you're not standing around watching. I hate standing around and watching. Coaches at home, if you have a drill with more than 2 people waiting for their rep, it's a bad drill. Throw all those drills in the garbage.
You hear that?
So these guys spread out. We get some passes, and there's no sequencing here, but we're practicing our language that we use in our clear, and they're talking to each other. I don't have the sound on. I forgot, not because I think the language is any sort of creative, but I forgot to put the sound in. So this guy has the ball. He throws it back to the goalie. Got a pass upfield, handles a bad pass. We got a cross field pass. Got a pass coming back. So again, these are passes that you're going to throw in a game. And then ultimately, when the drill is over, all these guys will eventually move upfield. Everybody will end over the midfield line. So you get a little sneaky conditioning in.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody gets everyone gets upfield, and then they exit to the sideline, and then the next group comes in. So, and again, it's not perfectly nourish or clear, but it gives them practice in the types of passes that they're going to have to make, and which I think is absolutely critical.
Touches are important.
It's so important. So we got a save, and I think you're going to see some of what we just talked about. So the goalie looks upfield, can't make the pass, throws it off to the side, pass upfield, guy catches, makes the big turn, sees a little pressure, he steps away from pressure, throws it over the top, and then you're out. So, creating drills, even in the smallest, most granular pieces, 2 people, and then, part hole, everyone saw it. I'm like the smallest part of the sand, piece of sand, of the smallest granular piece of the part of the hole, because I think that develops confidence. Like, I've been in this situation before. I've made this pass before. I've made this decision before. I've used this language before. I've told someone else what to do before. All these things become natural. And, I think about, all the drills that I showed, we do them for about 90 seconds. So you got to be able to set it up quickly, have leaders, have your upperclassmen run it, know the language, know the teaching points, and then I can be quality control and walk around and teach all those little parts. And, to my last slide before we get to questions is, obviously there's a competitiveness to everything that you do. You want to do it right. You want to do it loud. You want to do it with great technique. You want to do it with clarity of communication. But choreography, not how you set up a drill and create a drill. If a drill takes more than 30 seconds to set up, unless it's a full field drill, it's probably a bad drill. But choreography is also teaching the footwork and the movement of how you run through the gauntlet, or how you adjust yourself when you make a slide decision, or how you exit, how you guard a double move, the ball gets moved, and how my feet work to get to my next responsibility. That choreography, not that I think I'm Janet Jackson, but I think I'm pretty good at choreography.
With those shoes, you might be, man. I don't know.
Let's see those again, because they're dirty, man. Those things are
nice.
shiny. Is the choreography and it helps guys understand why every little pivot matters. I say a lot on these things that the difference between good defense and great defense is about the size of your computer screen that you're looking at home. That's a skip lane. That's a finishing and approach. That is difference between ball pressure or no ball pressure. So when you teach your guys that every little pivot and step matters, they start believing it. And then when you show it on film and they do it right and you point out and doing wrong and they see the cost of it, then they start, not only do they embrace it in between their ears, but they embrace it in their heart. And if you have that, you have a chance to have a really good defense. And then the last thing is creativity matters. A lot of the drills that I was pointing out there, not all the defensemen were in the drill, but you had to imagine they were in the drill. Not all the offensive players were in the drill. Some of the drills, Simon says, had no offensive players. You have to immerse yourself in that physical space, visualize the 6-on-6 on the front porch or wherever you are, and imagine that those guys are there. Because I'm trading off putting them in the drill, because if they're in the drill, they might not get as much out of it, and I need them for the other group because they're doing it, 15 yards from you. And so creativity and the ability to visualize really matters. And if you can't do that, we're going to help you do it. And if you refuse to do it, you will have a great view of the field from the sideline.
Nice. I love it. Is that it?
That's it.
That was great, Coach. A lot of really cool drills.
Unshare your screen so I can see that big face of yours. Let me see that big screen you got. Q&A, I need the whole thing.
What, anybody want to jump in? Does anybody have any questions?
Coach, can you unshare your screen so that we can,
do
you mind? Well, and we do have a question actually, and we're going to go to actually one of our favorite registration signups. The head coach of the Stanford women's staff, Coach Spencer, has a great question for you. And Coach Spencer, if you're on and can hear me, do you mind saying your question live to Coach Byrne?
Sure, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Coach Byrne. That was excellent. I really appreciate your time, and this coaching summit is really great. I feel like that Simon Says drill, I've been spending most of my time over the past 10 months visualizing my team and coaching. So it's really nice to continue to get to learn despite not having my team on campus. But what I'm wondering for you, Coach, is what's your philosophy on, do you teach more than one defense? Do you just want to be really good at one thing? And then kind of with that, when you get into season, do you spend any time preparing your defense to run a scout look for your offense? And just curious to see how much you care about that.
Yeah. So the first, great. Thank you. Thank you, Coach. I appreciate, all the way from California. Thank you. If you're in California, hopefully you are. I teach one defense. I feel like if you can teach one defense really well, that it can appear much more complex than it actually is. When you're teaching stance and evaluation and communication and approaches and recoveries and half approaches and shows and things like that, you can have your opponent spend a lot of time trying to figure out what your defense is. I'm big on empowering my guys, as I'm sure you are with your ladies, is that I want to be really good at one thing, because I think that it's hard with the time constraints that we're under and all of that. And there's definitely a school of thought, and there's probably a lot of coaches that change from week to week. And I think that's the influence of like NFL, like, the guys who are acolytes of NFL coaches. But the thing is, they get to reset every 3 to 5 seconds and signal in and do all these things. So I think that's an impact. And I think the more defenses or the more tweaks or the more changes you make, you'll find yourself mediocre at a lot of different things. It doesn't mean it never works. Like you're a team that always plays man and you teach a zone for 1 week or a possession. I think it's just really hard to be good at multiple defenses. And so as a result, by focusing on one thing, you can really teach guys. And again, I don't spend a lot of time on guarding. I have to make a trade-off. But I feel like if I could become really good at the other 5 guys' evaluations and stance and language and their decision-making and their athleticism, stance-wise and read-wise, it looks multiple to the Dodger. It looks multiple to your opponent. They spend a lot of time figuring out, is that a fake slide or is that a real slide? Is that guy going to come, show 80% of the way and then peel off? And then, anything that causes indecision for your opponent is a win. And I think the best way to do that is to do one thing really well. As far as, do I have our scout team play the defense of our future opponent? Yes. And I think that that's a hard thing. It was kind of a hard thing this fall when I'm coaching a new team who I'm, who had multiple coaches for a couple of years. They didn't know whether to, they would sometimes revert back to bad habits, and now you're asking them to do someone else's bad habits or someone else's mistakes, and that's really hard. But yes, I do believe in teaching the scout team to run your opponent's defense.
Love it. Well, we're gonna have one of your favorites on, Coach. Coach Zumo. He's got two in there, and you know
when you talked about the Zoom bomb earlier, I thought that was like vodka and sambuca or something.
Coach Byrne, how are you?
Coach Z, what's going on, brother?
Not much. So, question for you. I know you like to slide and slide often. Do you ask your on-ball defenders to play defense or give your defense a certain amount of time to recover? If they're playing on-ball defense, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. And then second part of that is your slide guys or guys in the crease, do you have them positioned a certain way? Butt to the ball side sideline, chest a certain direction, etc.
Great question. And again, I don't teach my guys to correct you a little bit. I don't teach my guys to slide a lot. I teach them to make assessments on whether they have to slide. So, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they make imperfect decisions and things like that. But, we tend to slide, but not kind of automatically. But I get your point on that. On ball, I tell my guys all the time, give me a second. Give me one piece of contact and give me a second. That's what your 5 off-ball teammates need. It becomes harder if it's off of a skip pass and things like that. That's why skip passes are kind of scary. But give me a second and give me one piece of contact. Because if you can get to a second and you can get one piece of contact, it means you can get to the second. And it means if you can close that space with any sort of territory that you earn, it means you can get to the second piece of contact. So and I also tell guys, I'm like, listen, you played secondary in high school. You played, defensive back, or you played basketball, you did something. You telling me you can't give me a second? I challenge guys' manhood around that, not in a bad way, but it's like, because I want these guys like, yeah, I give a second. A second's like that. So, when I'm coaching, the offensive middies, when they come down to spend time with me, that's the first thing I say to them. Some of you guys played two-way midfield at some point. You've been down on defense. Do you want to come off the field? And they're like, no. Well, then become better at this so we don't have to sub you off the field. So give me a second. Give me one piece of contact, Tommy. That's the price of entry. That's the low bar. And it's not asking a lot. And as a result, when guys get, coach, did you see me? I made that guy double move. I covered him for 3 seconds. They're all fired up. So, under demand and they'll over deliver. As far as kind of stance, so if I'm making a right-handed alley dodge down the hash, the defenseman is left foot to the hash, right foot to the crease. His chest is his butt's toward the corner of the field or the sideline, depending on the angle. And that's the way we want it to look. I want that guy to see as much of the front porch as possible.
I appreciate it, Coach.
Did I paint the picture, Zoom Bomb?
Always.
Coach Zoom's best deli on the island. Go.
Sequa.
Yeah, no doubt.
No doubt.
Coach Byrne, we're bringing on Coach Bob Waters from down in Northern Virginia for a quick question.
Coach H2O, let's go.
Hey, Coach Byrne, how you doing?
What's going on?
Hey,
first of all, Coach Waters has the greatest email, and it's Coach Bob H2O.
That's it. And I have to give a shout out to fellow Blue Hen Noah Foster. Great job, Noah. If you're still there. Coach Byrne, could you just touch on the key success factors when you're evaluating your defense, when you're breaking down game film, you're evaluating your defensive players, your defense? What are the key success factors that you're, that are the priority evaluation points for you? That's the first question. The second question, the most important attributes you're looking for in your D recruits.
So back in my previous job, I had a thing on my whiteboard. I'm going to see if I can remember. And again, it's relatively speaking. So I would like, and I don't think I ever lost a game with the exception of the national championship game without these stats. Less than 30 shots, less than 15 shots on goal, no rebound goals, no extra man goals, 10 empty possessions, possessions with no shots taken, less than 7 goals.
Great.
So
Awesome.
that was just in my head. I never shared that with anybody. That was just in my head. I always felt like we get to 8 goals, we would win. And so they've changed a little bit. I think the shot clock has changed things, but I still think about a lot of those things that if you can, and obviously clearing the ball, not failing to clear more than twice.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't give up extended possessions. Failures to clear really matter. We spent a lot of time on clearing because, giving an extra bite at the apple when you get the stop is pretty demoralizing. As far as what I look for a defenseman, it's kind of like beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder. I don't have like things, because I coached a 5'7" 3-time All-American and a 6'7" first-team All-American. So I don't get caught up in they have to look a certain way or a certain height. You just kind of things when you see them. I really, obviously I want guys to be able to cover people up to a certain point, but I've had D middies who couldn't cover me, who I recruited because they did the other 6 or 7 things really well. So it's like John Wooden said, focus on what you do well, not what you can't do. I think not everybody can do everything, and so you're not going to be great at everything. But I do watch cover. Up to a point. Like obviously, if you're great at covering people, that's awesome. But if you're pretty good at covering people, if you cover 2 out of 3 people on ball, that's fine. Or if you're a great off-ball guy, one of the best defensemen I ever coached, Eddie Glazner at Notre Dame. Eddie was a pretty good cover guy. He ended up evolving, through his time at Notre Dame into an elite off-ball. And a guy who I've said in other things that if I was the national team coach, he'd be one of the first 3 defensemen I would take, and probably ahead of some other really good defensemen that I coached at Notre Dame. And so so you trade off, like, to be great at one thing doesn't mean you can be terrible at something else. You have to have a certain level of quality on the other factors that are really good, as far as change of direction, ability off the ground, communication, off ball ability, IQ, all that stuff gets kind of thrown into a stew of the attributes that and they're not much different than everybody else. But I think I care really about guys who are great off ball.
Okay.
Because I think that's hard. I think that's easier to manipulate, but harder to recruit. And a guy, there have been guys I coached who were elite athletically who could never get the off ball thing. And as a result, never played. Meanwhile, if you put them in the pro combine, they would have been like, holy moly. Some of those guys never played.
Great coach. Great question, HTO.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach Walters. And Coach Byrne, we got another question teed up from Coach Isif in Mass. John, you want to share your question with Coach Byrne here?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Coach. Thanks for taking my question. Just philosophically, how do you guys typically slide to dodges from X? Do you have a preference? Crease, adjacent, coma? Does it depend situationally? Just what's your philosophy on sliding dodges from X?
I subscribe to the Henry Ford mentality of defense. You know, I tell my guys, you can play any way you want as long as it's the way that I teach you. And I feel the same way about slide. I'm a crease sliding. I slide from the crease against the circle. I teach one way. It goes back to Coach Spencer's question is, you know, there's a lot going on. So being consistent and having recognition and clarity, you know, of the roles and your technique and all of that, it makes it easier. And as a result, it may make it easier for your opponents to think about where you might be vulnerable. I understand that. So on dodges from X, I slide from the crease. And again, teaching your guys to kind of stance and evaluation and how to do it when there's 2 or 3 people on the crease. That's a whole other separate, that might be on my second presentation for the Back It Up crew on the next next summit.
You said it.
See what I'm doing that? See how I'm teasing that for you guys?
You said it. You said it, Coach. We're in bonus time right now, man.
But
I think
We have a 4-minute overtime here. It's golden goal. So.
Are we in penalty? Are we in penalty time? I'll lay on the ground a little bit longer. We get some more penalty time. But John, so I teach sliding from the crease, regardless of set, dodge angle, where the sun is in the sky, uniform color. We're sliding from the crease.
Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome. Who's next?
We got Coach Hawk next. Coach, why don't you dial us up here?
Hey, Coach. Thanks for taking my question. And shout out to the Back It Up guys. I actually stumbled on your first episode about 2 weeks ago and couldn't let it go. So congrats on doing this series and really happy you guys are doing this for us. Coach Byrne, being a brand new head coach, just some of the growing pains that you've experienced empowering your guys to do your drills. And then what you have done as a fairly new head coach as well to remedy some of those growing pains with your guys, especially during like this whole COVID time. Just kind of touch on that.
That's a really good question, Andrew. One of my really biggest growing pains is probably the 10 pounds I put on since COVID has started. You know, COVID-19, I think it's the 19 pounds I put on. So so that's one of the growing pains, you know. Whoever laughed at that, thank you very much.
We're welcome.
Cannolis.
It's Monica's meatball subs, Coach. It's all right.
That's RBA hoops too. No summer recruiting.
Yeah, they know me over there. I'm like Norm from Cheers. But that's a really good question. I can tell you what I did was one of the first things I did is I sent them, before we had created our own YouTube channel and presence and video, all of our own whiteboard stuff for our guys, is I basically sent all my defensemen, midfielders, and D-middies, the playlist of all my drills from the Notre Dame YouTube channel. So there was probably about 50 different drills on there. I said, watch this. And then probably a couple of weeks later, before our first practice, they were doing captain's practice, Andrew. And so they were going through the drills. They were teaching themselves. I go, these are the fundamental drills that I'll use to teach you, my philosophy, my method of defense. And so study these, do these, teach each other them, watch any sort of webinars or podcasts I've done. I consistently deliver the same message for 15 years, whether it was even before there were podcasts. So I've been pretty consistent on that. And then the next thing I did, Andrew, was I got all of my D middies together and O middies, and I set up a conference call with about 6 or 7 of my D middies that I coached at Notre Dame. And I had such a strong relationship with it, having recruited all those guys. I got them on a Zoom call even before Zoom was happening and hip. And they basically gave them the inside, this guy's crazy, but it works, them talking about me. And they had a bunch of different Zoom calls, and they bonded over the connection of learning how to play this defense. And I did the same, and I had coached maybe 6 or 7 All-American D-middies at Notre Dame. I got, I think, 8 or 9 first-team All-American defensemen and a couple other guys that I coached at Notre Dame, and they got face-to-face on Zoom with all of our close defensemen. And they taught them, here's what you've learned, here's what you're going to learn, teach each other how to do stuff. It works. And I did the same thing with that group. So they were able to build a bridge of connectivity between, guys that I coached for 15 years at Notre Dame to, guys that I just started coaching at Harvard. So that was an awesome thing because these guys are, the guys I coached in my old place 15 years. I'm unbelievably close. I go to their weddings. I've been to their christenings. They're, some of them I've been to confirmations. That's how old I am. And so, so that was the other part of it is doing that, them teaching themselves them drills, them connecting with guys I coached in my former life. And then the last thing was I don't always lead the film session. Sometimes I call a film session and then I hand the telestrator or the remote to a guy and say, you're running it today, and I leave. Is that them learning, just like they have to learn how to teach each other the drills, I have to trust them to coach each other. As Coach Byrne was saying earlier, when you're a coach, you're like 50 yards away from all the action. What I know doesn't matter anymore. What you've imparted and taught to your guys really will carry the day. And I'm not one of these guys who's yelling, go here, Johnny, move there, do that, step up. Like I'm trying to be like a sphinx because I want to empower my guys. I'll talk at timeouts and half times and quarters and things like that, but it's a player's game. I'm not like an English Premier coach. I am doing some coaching, but I'm not like trying to move the Queen's Gambit, moving people around the chessboard. I'd have a headache by the end of every game. And so that's how I approached it, Andrew. I don't know. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Coach, we have the finest Saxon of all time that we need to pull up here. We'll see if we can get his video going. This might shock the system a little bit, Coach Byrne, but it might be one of the greatest RBA players that we've ever seen, and we'll see if this works. Just stand by here. He might be rejecting us, actually. Coach A, are you there? Do you know how to figure this out? Oh, wait, panelists. Hey!
Hey!
Jerry, that's the first thing I've actually done with any technology without my assistant over my shoulder saying, no, touch that, hit that right there. So
it's like, hey, does this thing have the clapper?
I mean, he might have. I don't know if Kyle Georgalis is on this call right now, which I'm not sure if he is or not. He would be like, he's like falling over because he's like, Jesus, Coach just turned that thing on by himself. It's so bad. I'm only 51, and you think I was like 81, with this stuff. It's so bad. And
this is a big moment.
I've been enabled my whole life. I've always had good people around me, so just enabled me.
Coach Georgalis right now is like, damn, that just freed up like 15% of my day right there.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. We work long hours. The assistants say how long they're working. It's because they're just cleaning up my crap all the time. You know what I'm saying? It's
totally.
The day would be cut in half.
100%.
If it wasn't.
Oh, good to see you.
No, good to see you. Great job. Great job.
You,
and I've heard that much to my excitement that pickleball is something that you are partaking in, and that racket will go with me the next recruiting trip. So along with tennis and the basketball team.
Of course.
So we got it all. YMCA.
Of course. For the listeners, we Coach Alberisi, we got a crew of about 15 or 20 people who try not to let, sideline recruiting get in the way of our exercise. And so we're always looking for basketball games. So when you see us leaving, it's not for us to go see our families. We're really going to work out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So pickleball is the sport of the future.
No question, especially for our future.
Yes. We
our
only have two hips, and I'm trying to protect them.
Your future, right there, for sure.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Great job,
coming
Jerry.
on, Coach.
Thank you, man.
You got it. Well done, as always.
We'll see you tomorrow night, Coach.
Looking forward to it. I'm gonna have everybody in right next to me to turn this whole thing on. So
So if you see like a third and fourth thumb come over the top, is that an assistant?
It's my third arm. It's my third arm.
You're the best, Coach. Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Coach.
right. Take care.
See you, Joe.
Oh, the best. Awesome. Well, Jerry, I mean, we got a couple more. I mean, do you want to keep eating questions, or what do you got?
People have paid good money, man. Let's give them money's worth.
Okay. Well, Coach Foster first threw a compliment at you, saying he's a big fan of your defense. He coaches a small high school in Long Island. Let's see if we can't get Coach on here to ask your question. Give me 2 seconds here. Let's see if he's still on. He is. Yep. Coach Foster, you able to come on and?
Yeah, is this working?
Yes,
it's
sir.
working.
All right, nice. Yeah, so I'm at Hauppauge High School on Long Island, small B school, competitive school, but our youth program struggles. So we get kids that played basketball, played soccer, and I'll make them defensemen typically because it's just too late to make them offensive guys. But if you had to pick 2 or 3 drills just to accelerate that learning curve, get those guys up to speed as quick as possible, what would you spend your time on?
I would probably, I think you need, and there's a lot of choices. So I might not narrow it down, but I'll give you my YouTube channel when we're done. But anything that involves approaches and collapses or exits, anything where you can practice a starting stance, coach, like here's how you stand when you're off ball, when you're not guarding somebody. And then anything that involves them having to turn, sideways run, shuffle, and then make the final, few yards of finishing an approach. And then how you defend a guy who maybe runs at multiple speeds or multiple angles. So 32 lunge pail is a good one. Like that teaches them how to stand off ball, turns them to how to react when their man catches the ball. It teaches them how to exit their off ball position to go guard somebody. And then you can have that guy guard somebody and where he has to shuffle or sideways run. So you can't be, and within that is having what I call a quiet stick. I'm not a huge fan of penalties. I historically I've coached one of the least penalized teams in the country because I think toughness is not getting a penalty. So teaching your guys to keep their heads of their stick, I won't say what I say, but from chest to hips, trying to teach them to keep the head of their stick within a really certain square area on your opponent's torso or hip, I think is really important. You don't get penalties that way. You don't get slashes. You might get some holds, but you won't get the minute penalty. And so
those are only 30. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. So I think anything that involves that, and there's, we have Byrne Method YouTube channel on the internet. We have a lot of my drills on there. Silent plug. And
I love it, Coach. Anytime on our platform, anytime.
And then the second drill would be any sort of slide and recovery drill, because everybody needs help. Everybody needs to learn how to communicate and tell a teammate where to go and what to do. So how you leave your on-ball responsibility, how you exit that job, and then enter into a new off-ball role and stance and position and part of the field. I think awesome. That gives you a way to include all the different C's that I presented: communication, stance, approaches, recovery, all of those things kind of. So any 2 drills that include those elements are good drills in my mind.
I think I spent too much time on cover and not enough time on the other things. So I learned a lot from this. I really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. There's nothing wrong with spending time on covering. It's a little bit easier to do because it's easily transferred from basketball and some elements of football, secondary stuff. And so I just, I'm fortunate because I coach at this level that, but I also believe that making the other 5 guys great is easier to achieve than making an on-ball guy great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Coach Byrne, next question's coming in from Coach Foley. Wants to know when you teach slide reads. Coach Foley, hit him.
Hey, Coach, what's going on? Thanks for taking my question. Coming from the high school and travel level, I've noticed that there are a select handful of guys that just kind of get when to slide, how to slide. but a large handful of them really do struggle with the idea of when should I slide, when is the right time. Do you have any key points that you kind of teach your guys that may struggle with that idea or those concepts? And if so, what are they?
I think one of the reasons why guys aren't great at that is because they're not great at 3 seconds before they have to slide. So, one of the drills that I teach is this drill called shedding, SHEDDING, shedding. And basically what you're trying to teach your defenseman is, if the ball changes sides of field, how do I orient myself, choreography and the footwork of how I go from being on one side of maybe a crease attackman to being on the other side of a crease attackman. There's footwork and technique and handwork that's involved there. And that allows you to get to your, not the ideal exact spot where you're going to have to make your decision, but it puts you pretty damn close. But then another problem that guys face is guys like to start in the optimal spot where they're going to have to make a slide decision. And that's just unrealistic. Because if I would say I'm a crease defenseman and Terrence, you're the crease attackman. If I shed you and go stand 6 yards from you as an alley dodge starts, what's going to happen? That guy's going to feed the guy that you freed up yourself from. Shedding is an important part of putting yourself in the spot to start your evaluation on whether you have to slide. The key becomes, and you saw it in the asterisk drill, is how do I work in that 6-yard window where I'm moving, or in Simon Says drill? Like, how efficiently do I move? Do I shuffle? Do I sideways run? So practicing that 6-yard difference between, the 6 yards away, this is the perfect spot for me to evaluate whether I have to slide, but I don't get to start in that spot. I start 6 yards away. Practicing how you work in that 6 yards is money. That's where you teach guys to be really good at making slide decisions. And the other thing, that the mistake that guys make is they establish themselves as a slide and they completely square up to the dodge. They don't stay sideways. You got to stay sideways, to Coach Zumo's earlier question, so you can see everything, as much as everything. You can't see behind you, obviously. You can see the dodge. You can see anybody who cuts in space. You can determine whether you're going to slide upfield or downfield, all of that. And so you can practice all of those things. And then the last part I touched upon, and I have a drill that I've never videoed, but where you're practicing signs of guys who are about to get beat. There's different looks, whether it's his butt end is sliding off of a guy's shoulder, or his hands are getting run through, or he falls down, or he airballs with a cross check and never hits the guy. So, guy gets, swims them to the middle of the field and he never touches them. So you can practice all of those things. But I think the critical thing is you don't get to start in the optimal spot. You need to practice the footwork where you're evaluating and when you go from a sideways stance to squaring up and finishing your slide.
Great. Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Coach, before we go back to Windsor, Connecticut, and Coach Cunningham, we have an anonymous attendee saying, one, again, thanks, great stuff. But, saying that you don't mind your goalies being mute, does that mean the slider is making the decision when to go? And do you find that they're able to slide more effectively by not having to wait for the goalie to tell them to slide?
Yeah, I think 100%. The goalie doesn't have the best view. The guy who is diagonal from the dodge has the best view. So that guy in that role, we have a specific term for that guy. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about that right now. But the guy who's diagonal from the dodge, one of the ways I refer to him as the slice of pizza guy. He's
the diagonal guys for the next summit.
Yeah, exactly. See? So the slice of pizza guy, if you think about the shape of a slice of pizza, the pointy end, not that Sicilian square stuff that they pass out as pizza in Chicago. I'm talking about Long Island, New York, thin crust pizza.
Coach, real quick, best pizza joint in Long Island.
Two Brothers, right on the border of Levittown and Hicksville. Shout out Newbridge Road. So here's the thing about that. So when you're the slice of pizza guy at the pointy part of the slice, coach, you're seeing a pretty good wedge of the field. You can see the Dodger, and you can see basically the two angles that he might choose to attack the goal. So the slice of pizza guy is typically the guy who's empowering the slide guy to slide. Now the slide guy still has responsibility. He can make these decisions on his own, but that slice of pizza guy is really important because guys don't like to leave the crease if they don't feel like they're getting trust and support from their other four defensemen. So you need kind of I call it dual directional trust, two-way trust, that the slide guy trusts that he's going to get supported by the other four people, and the other four people are using communication to empower the guy to slide. Dual directional trust.
Love
That's
it.
awesome.
Final question coming.
Coach, Windsor, Connecticut, finest, Loomis, Chafee, Coach Cunningham. Take us home.
Thanks. Appreciate you staying on so late to answer my question. You talked a little bit about how you don't teach the overhead check and all that and all the fundamental stuff, but the guy pulled it off in that original clip you showed. Where do you toe that line in terms of he pulls it off and successful, then he doesn't do it and he gets beat, and like you said, he gets ripped apart in film?
Yeah, you better get it.
It's great. That's where you toe the line? Just you got to get it. You got to get it.
Like one of the things that when you're, I put it this way, I coached at Notre Dame for maybe 14 years. I don't think I ever saw a guy go over the head on a guy in 14 years. So, that was, one thing that, like you had discipline, you didn't get penalties, you didn't get late hits, you didn't I wanted to have less than 2 penalties a game. Why give teams extra opportunities to score when they have hard enough time to score? And so, this is the way that we're going to play. And it doesn't mean those things never happen. Like the guy who made that play, who's Coach Zissy, I think, was on earlier, who Coach Zissy coached. He was a little bit stubborn at times. Yeah. So the message was in the first year was you better get that. And he was a guy that was a multi-year starter at Harvard who was not a starter all fall and in the preseason. Like he had to earn that back. That would have really hurt him if that didn't work out, because he had just kind of earned the right to have this time. And it shows that I can't trust you, because I'm telling you not to do things and you're doing the opposite. So, without being too harsh and things like that, I knew it was a transition period. You're teaching guys new ways of playing, that they're going to do things maybe that they used to be allowed to do. So I wasn't like that militant and dogmatic about necessarily how I would react to that, knowing that we're in this transition period.
Got it. Thanks so much. Awesome. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question,
Thank you.
Coach. Thank you.
Great question. I'm checking the tape right now too. Jack Keedy, didn't see any. Landis, I was checking some highlight films, Coach, to see if I saw any quick
Landis had a couple, but he was he so badly wanted to be a takeaway guy, and he had no idea how to do it. Eddie Glazner was a better takeaway guy than Landis. So.
Love it. Well,
Coach, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Electric.
Coach, this presentation went to 8 overtimes. And you won. We won. We did it.
Listen, you give the listeners what they want.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time.
This was really cool, 100%. Coach, especially as a D guy. I took a ton of notes, and I know some people were texting me on the side saying they learned a ton. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to doing it again down the road. And
we're going to hold on to that, Coach. We're going to hold on to that.
Yeah, we got that recorded.
Yeah.
I want some skulls. I want some skulls on that wall next time, Corey.
We can make that happen.
We'll have some skulls.
Yeah, we can make that happen. That's an easy ask.
First of all, Filippo in that film on the whiteboard back there is, he's probably got 8 people,
Yeah.
I made those up.
Fancy that.
I had to add.
I know you
Coach,
totally
actually.
did.
I had to add the 2 ones at the bottom just to make it look a little bit more busy, you know?
You know,
So
those numbers on the left, are those like girls you're gonna call later or something?
no, my fiance is probably watching. So Jess, how do you like that?
No.
No, those are our 28 offensive guys that, you know, we have too many. So it's Hunger Games right now. You know, we're competing for spots right now, Coach. It's good.
You have 28 attackmen and midfielders? Wow.
28. Yeah, it's a big group, but it's a fun group to work with, and they're talented and competitive. But yeah, it's a big group for sure.
Well,
Some will get demoted.
If you get a couple of guys sick, you're all set.
Yeah, we can withstand. You know, I don't want to jinx us, but we might be all right making it through the year here if we can follow the protocols.
All right.
So
all right, fellas.
So
thank you so much, Coach.
Thanks again, Coach. Amazing.